I haven't filmed anything in many years. Why is being on camera so hard? The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This book. My name's Katherina, if you didn't know. Well, of course you didn't know. It's the first video, unless you're watching in the future and watching other videos and you're coming back to this one. Hi, I'm Katherina, also known as the Bookworm Auntie. Welcome to my channel. I am baffled by this book and I can't tell if it's in a good way or a bad way. Alright, I'm just gonna start going through my notes, which are a hot mess. They got more and more unhinged as they went along. If you don't know, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is about a woman who lives in early 1700s France, and she makes a deal with the god of darkness to live forever, to have independence over her life. And it comes at the cost of everyone around her forgets who she is as soon as they see her. So they'll interact for a moment and then they'll turn around for too long, or they'll go behind a door and then suddenly she's completely forgotten. She can't leave a mark on the world. She can't leave an imprint. I heard that this was really big a couple years ago. Finally read it, and I think it was under 48 hours. I think it was closer to 36. I don't know how to tell you what I feel in the non-spoilery section because I haven't talked all of this out yet. You'll know what I feel about it at the end. If you want to be spoiled, go ahead and start watching. If you don't want to be spoiled, then go read it and come back and we can discuss together. Henry frickin' Strauss. I liked him as a character on the page. I just wish we didn't get so much in his head for such a significant part of the book. Henry Strauss, as a point of view protagonist, I disliked immensely. The entire time we were in his head, I was just miserable and I was ready his thoughts to be done. Like, I didn't have a good time. Maybe that was V.E. Schwab's point. Maybe she was trying to showcase just how miserable he was because of all of the crap and like the fact that he was about ready to commit suicide before he made the deal with Luke. Maybe it was that. Maybe that was the point. But I wanted to get back to Addie, and I really hoped we would. It felt like a breath of fresh air when we came back to being in her head again. The reason why I liked being in her head and I didn't like being in his is that at the sign of any kind of trouble or disappointment or trauma or any kind of miserable thing, he was just ready to give up, throw in the towel, be like, okay, this is it. And like, he just makes the worst of every scenario. He doesn't fight back. He doesn't fight for himself. It's so frustrating. But then you get to be in Addie's head, and yes, her life is arguably just as, if not even more miserable than his. But she is still tenacious. She still fights back. She still has some grit in her. And that's what made me love reading from her, even though it was also a bit miserable reading from her point of view. It was easier because she was fighting back. It felt like that she just had more agency as a character than he did. And I cannot stand characters who don't have agency. It's like the female protagonist in Rogue One, Jen Erso. I really liked the story of Rogue One, the Star Wars movie that kind of takes place a little bit before Episode 4. She doesn't really have a lot of agency over her choices in the story. Even though the story itself is good, I don't enjoy seeing so much of the story from her point of view because she's not making interesting choices. She's letting the world happen to her. And I feel like that's what's happening with Henry Strauss. And so why it was so frustrating to read from his head and realize like he's just not taking control over anything in his life. He's just letting things happen to him, even after he makes the deal. I didn't like that there was sex on the page. I think all of the scenes that it showed could have very easily been implied and then fade to black. I don't think we needed to see any of that on the page to get the point. So there were a bunch of pages I had to skip over. That was frustrating. I don't like it when I have to do that. Second gripe. The second big medium-sized gripe. I think it was too long. I liked the pacing overall, aside from the Henry Strauss section and the Brit in the middle. But I think we saw too much of the mundane and not enough of the interesting things of her past that really pulled you in. We saw a couple of the significant moments with the love interest she has through the centuries and through the decades, like Remy and Mateo and Max. So we saw like those were some interesting things, but then a lot of it was just so mundane, and I wish we got some more interesting things. It could have been just as long if she had cut out some of that mundaneness that felt just like the same going through the story, and added some more of those interesting things that she just talks about in passing that she witnessed through history. Like, I wanted to see more of like when she was a spy in World War II and was transporting secret information to help win the war. Like, I want to know more about that. Like, why? I want to see more of that. So that's my big gripe. And my two medium ones, the smaller ones are just nitpicky things, and I think these might be more preference than anything else. I wish that the book had ended instead of on Addie's whole explanation of what she was going to do with Luke to trick him and all of this stuff. I wanted it to end on the line, "I remember you," on page 439. I feel like that would have been much more thematically cohesive. I was watching a review by Daniel Green. If you don't know him, he's one of my favorite booktubers and does a lot of fandom, more pertaining to books, but just general fandom content on YouTube. I can leave a link to his channel in the description so you can go check him out and check out that review specifically. He was talking about how throughout the entire book the author trusts you to keep up and to put the pieces together that need to be put together to understand it, but then at the end with this final scene she starts hand-holding the reader. Yeah, I'm just gonna refer you to Daniel Green's review of this book for my thoughts on that because he explains it much more succinctly than I could. I don't like that there was so little levity in this book. Like, I just felt heavy reading it the whole time. It was like I was in perpetual existential melancholic angst. That is the most succinct way I could put it. I was fascinated by the story, but then just also feeling awful inside. This was not an easy read. And because of that, even disregarding the whole crappy Henry Strauss chapters that I'm definitely never going to reread, just because of the heaviness of everything else, this is never a book I'm going to reread. I actually wrote it down in my notes. There was one part, the very first part that made me laugh wasn't until like page 300 and something. I wrote it down in my notes because it was so significant. It stood out that the book made me laugh. That's how little levity there is. It took over 3/4 of the book to have something that was fun and joyful, like something that balanced out the level of tension and the level of angst. The story, it desperately needed that, and there was only like one moment where it felt like, oh, I can breathe again. This is so nice to like have a moment of laughter. And then it went right back to existential angst. Okay, now with all the heavy stuff out of the way, I want to talk about the things I really liked. That I did love a lot of this book. I loved Addie LaRue. Addie as a character, she is tenacious, she has agency, she is full of grit and determination. She has a really crappy life, but despite all of that, she still fights for it. She fights for her life through to the very end. Like with Luke, there were times I was certain that she was actually going to say yes and yield her soul to Luke. Instead, every time she surprised me by saying, no, not tonight, or no, I'm not going to, no, 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 no. I loved it. I loved every moment of that. Every single thing of that was just fantastic. I really liked the setting. It's hard to say you like the setting because the setting is just all over the place. I felt grounded in it even when we were jumping around in time periods, jumping around in the different histories of the world and the different like countries she's in, the different cities, all of these new places. Every place that she went to, I felt instantly grounded and I was just in it. Now that's part of why I just love Addie as a protagonist so much. You really understand the city or the place and the context that she's in, not just in a general historical way, but how she would have experienced it, and it completely reframes how you see everything. I loved all of that. I also really I don't know if this is something I can say that I loved, but there's no other word for it because it's not a negative feeling that I had. It's just this book stays with you and it makes you really contemplate all of your insecurities and what you really want in life, and then makes you think about what you would give up to get it. What is the price that you would pay for your soul? This book does come to the wrong conclusion that everyone has a price for their soul and everyone will sell it to something or someone. I guess we can go back to that a little bit. One of the other things I didn't love was that idea of like everyone's soul can be bought. Like everyone's willing to sell their soul to evil for something. It's just a matter of what it is. I guess that ties back into things that I really like. It gets you thinking about eternity. It like in a way it's asking like, what is my price? And do I have one? And am I willing to sell it for something as simple as like what Henry did for a year or for the sake of independence? And then like, what is the cost of what you're asking for? Like the whole cliche quote, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. That quote is this book. Like that is this book. That is what's getting me thinking a lot. I closed this book and these thoughts of eternity, of the price for my soul, of being so glad that I have my Catholic faith to lean on for eternity and know that I can be grounded in that, and reflecting on the stability of having that as opposed to what the alternative could be. That's part of why I can't bring myself to rate this super low. despite the fact that the more I talk it out, there were more things I disliked about this book than that I liked. I can't rate this lower than a 3.5 out of 5. I do a 5-star rating system because it's giving me all these questions to ponder. There is something intrinsically important about considering these ideas. I love stories like this in theory because it gets you thinking so much. It gets you pondering the meaning of life. It gets you pondering the meaning of eternity, and it gets you thinking about all of these things that go beyond the material things. There's a really good attitude from Addie. She has come to be so detached from material things because through living for centuries, through not being able to hold on to things for more than a brief period of time, it's such a profound metaphor, I guess, for life. She realizes that the important things are the things that aren't material. They're the connections that you have with other people, the relationships. At the end of the day, what kind of person do you want to be remembered as? Who do you want to be? These are so much more important than the things we can hold in our hand. After talking through all of my thoughts, I'm sure there's still more that I could discuss, but I've been going on for so long. That's going to be a wrap on my thoughts. In the off chance that people actually watch this, if you have thoughts of what you thought about this book, that sounded really redundant, about the themes, about the characters, about any of the things I didn't discuss, write them down in the comments. Let's continue the conversation. I want to unpack this more. So all that being said, I think with everything talked out, I can't rate it a 5. I'm not rating it a 5 because it didn't do everything I wanted it to do, and it did a lot of things I wish it hadn't done. It's also not a 3 because it gets me thinking. I think I'm going to give it a 4. I am giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. For the very first time, this is the Bookworm Auntie. My name's Katherina. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I have my air conditioner on now. I had it off for this video so it wouldn't be in the background. I'm so sweaty. I was pacing and I had the light. If you can see over there, I have an umbrella light from my my teenage movie making days and that kind of thing. I forgot how hot the lights get. I'm so sweaty. Okay, it's fine. Let's have some good discussions. If you're still here, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Mwah.